What's going on, everybody? I'm back with another DVD and VHS review, and this time it is my first VHS review of a release that I'm not familiar with. So, we're going for this video. We're going down to Fraggle Rock to review the release Where It All Began. So let's cut the chatter and get on to the release history of this release. Where It All Began was first released on VHS and DVD on July 20th, 2004 by Hit Entertainment. Again, this is yet another one that didn't receive a lot of recognition. Outside of the VHS, it had this original DVD release and this special edition. After that, it disappeared. What's interesting about this, however, is that this contains 3 episodes from the first season of the main series and the first episode of a series outside of this one. Quite interesting. But let's find out what the episodes are when we go on to our episodes. So, let's do it. So, Where It All Began contains the first 3 episodes from season 1, and of course, the first episode of the series, Pingu, Beginnings, Webley and the Gorgs, Let the Water Run, and Pingu is introduced. Like the last review, I'm not familiar with this series, but I'm gonna skip over to reviewing how I feel about the episodes and rate them afterwards. With that said, our first episode is Beginnings. Let's do it. At first, I wasn't sure how I would feel about this episode, but holy crap. This is pretty unique. It's the first of it's how the series became what it was today, and I think it's pretty average. Where not only are we introduced to the outside too, Doc and Sprocket, but we also get to see most of our characters. And holy, I'm really surprised that they're quite an interesting lot. And while this episode may not be as streamlined as other Where It All Began episodes, I'd say this is a pretty average one compared to other ones that we've had. But even though it may be a bit confusing, I think it's okay for their beginnings, and it's one of their best. I rate this episode a 10 out of 10. Yeah. This is a step down from the previous episode. It's not bad by any means, but I wouldn't call it fantastic. Webley and the Gorgs is pretty weird. I will admit real quick, I'm not a real fan of the Gorgs. However, having main roles in this episode is pretty crazy. And there's a lot to unpack in terms of one of in Junior, only attracted to catching them. And this doesn't really further their characters in general. And I don't really know how to feel about the ending in general, because they barely do anything with Doc and Sprocket. And although it may be a bland episode, I think that the bland Gorgs make this an episode that is worth watching. And I'm gonna be fair and rate this an 8 out of 10. Well, while not being the best of the bunch, I think Let the Water Run is quite unique. It shows in this episode that from the outside world, Doc and Sprocket primarily provide the water for the living organisms. And I may not be a big fan of this episode because I may not have been a big fan of this at first, but now I've warmed up to it a little bit. And while the episode may not be as streamlined as the other two episodes, I think it's not as good as Beginnings, but it's better than Webley and the Gorgs, that's for true. And I think we can let the water, and I think this episode can let the water run free with a solid 9 out of 10. Holy, I thought I dealt with this series for the last time. For starters, I'm not really a big fan of this episode, and it's not because I find the series most episodes in this series mediocre, but there are other reasons. The episode, to me, doesn't make much sense, and most of the story is just boring to begin with. And nothing even happens here. This is the one, and I dreaded getting to this episode because it's just so boring. And nothing exciting even happens in the episode. It's just a bunch of boring scenes focusing on the titular character. And even though this episode may be a good one to some, I wouldn't consider it fantastic. I know there are lots of people who like this episode. That's fine. You do you. I'm not going to bash anyone who does. But honestly, it's not my go-to episode. So I'm just going to say it's one that I'd be more than happy to skip over. I give it a 6 out of 10. Alright, so what do I think about Where It All Began? As a home media release, Where It All Began had a lot of hope going into it, but in the end, while it did fall on its face, and while it may be a bit mixed, I still think the series it was pushing for is pretty good. While it may not be overly amazing, I still think it has a lot of hope in it. It has a mix of two good and two decent episodes. And for my only release from this franchise, it's an excellent lot of episodes. And as for the Pingu one, it may be terrible, but it's not Pingu Runs Away levels of terrible. I'm about 50-50 with this release. For those of you who are looking for some of Mr. Henson's work, I recommend turning to the release. But for those of you who are looking for something else that is more your go-to, I wouldn't bother. It's a roll of the dice again. And that does it for this review. I'd like to say thanks to all of you for watching this short review. And feel free to check out some of my other reviews that are in the playlist that I've linked in the description. So what am I going to do next time? Well, we have one more uncommon review to take care of before the last winter DVD and a Valentine's Day special. So now we're going to escape from the kitchen with the crew of Annoying Orange. See you guys next time.